In December 1959, BMW was only hours away from disappearing. The company that had once built aircraft engines, racing motorcycles, and some of Germany's most admired automobiles was nearly bankrupt. Its factories were losing money. Its cars were trapped between tiny economy models and expensive machines few people could afford. And inside a crowded shareholder meeting in Munich, a plan was waiting for approval. BMW would be sold to Daimler-Benz. Its factories could be absorbed. Its employees could be dismissed. And the blue and white badge might survive only as a forgotten symbol from Germany's industrial past. The decision appeared inevitable. But then the meeting began to turn. Small shareholders challenged the figures. Dealers and workers refused to surrender. One determined investor began to reconsider whether BMW was truly beyond saving. What happened next did more than rescue a failing company. It created the BMW the world recognizes today. But BMW's rise was never a simple story of engineering brilliance. Before it became a global symbol of performance and luxury, it built engines for war, exploited forced labor, lost its factories, survived by producing motorcycles and tiny cars, and repeatedly gambled its future on machines that could have destroyed it. This is the story of an aircraft engine company that was forbidden to fly, a car maker that nearly became part of its greatest rival, and an empire built from the moment BMW refused to disappear. Long before BMW built sports sedans, racing cars, or luxury machines, it was created for a battlefield above Europe. In 1916, Munich was already being transformed by the First World War. Aircraft had evolved from fragile reconnaissance tools into weapons capable of changing what happened on the ground. Armies needed engines that were light, reliable, and powerful enough to keep performing as the air became thinner. That demand brought together the industrial roots of what would become BMW. One branch came from Gustav Otto, an aviation pioneer whose aircraft company was reorganized as Bayerische Flugzeugwerke. The other came from Karl Rapp's Engine Works, a struggling manufacturer whose designs had developed a reputation for technical problems. The company did not begin as an obvious future champion. It began as a problem waiting for the right engineer. In early 1917, Max Friz arrived in Munich. He understood that an aircraft engine designed for ordinary conditions would lose power as it climbed. His solution was unusual. Build an engine that was effectively too powerful at ground level, then restrict it until the aircraft reached higher altitude. The result was the BMW 3A. It was a massive 19-liter inline-six engine, but its importance came from more than raw power. At altitude, where competing engines weakened, the 3A could continue delivering strong performance. Military officials were impressed enough to demand production before the young company was truly prepared for it. That same year, Rapp Motorenwerke was renamed Bayerische Motorenwerke. BMW had a name, a product, and a purpose, but it did not yet have security. The 3A entered production in 1918 and helped establish BMW's reputation for advanced engineering. Orders expanded, a new factory was built. The workforce grew rapidly. For a brief moment, the company's future seemed tied permanently to the sky. Then Germany lost the war. The industry that had created BMW suddenly became the reason it could no longer continue as before. Under the post-war restrictions imposed on Germany, aircraft engine production was prohibited. The company's main product disappeared almost overnight. BMW had engineering talent, machinery, and workers, but it no longer had permission to build the machine for which it had been created. The timing was especially cruel. On June 17, 1919, test pilot Zeno Diemer climbed to approximately 9,760 meters in an aircraft powered by a BMW 4 engine. It was an extraordinary demonstration of what the company's technology could achieve. Yet the record could not solve BMW's commercial crisis. A company born to fly was now forbidden to build aircraft engines. So BMW searched for anything its factories could legally produce. Its engineering knowledge was redirected into engines for boats, trucks, and buses. The company even became involved in products far removed from aviation, including railway brakes. This was not expansion driven by confidence, it was survival through improvisation. The BMW name, production operations, workforce, and emblem would pass through a complicated corporate restructuring before being transferred to Bayerische Flugzeugwerke in 1922. The company that emerged still carried the identity created by its aircraft engines, but it now needed a completely different reason to exist. That reason would not come from another airplane. It would arrive on two wheels. And the machine BMW built next would establish an engineering formula the company would protect for generations. BMW's escape from extinction began with a machine that had only two wheels. At the 1923 Berlin Motor Show, the company unveiled the R32, its first complete motorcycle. Max Friz designed it as a unified system rather than an aircraft engine attached to a frame. Its two-cylinder boxer engine placed one cylinder on each side directly in the cooling air. Power reached the rear wheel through a shaft instead of a chain. The layout was balanced, distinctive, and durable. More importantly, it gave BMW an identity beyond aviation. The R32 was followed by faster motorcycles, and racing victories strengthened the young brand. Its boxer engine and shaft drive became engineering principles BMW would preserve for generations. But motorcycles alone could not secure the company's future. Germany's roads were changing and demand for affordable cars was beginning to grow. BMW had engineering talent, but it lacked the factories and experience needed to create an automobile business from nothing. In 1928, it found a shortcut. BMW acquired Fahrzeugfabrik Eisenach in Thuringia. The factory produced the Dixie 315, a small car built under license from Britain's Austin 7. It was simple, inexpensive, and far removed from the luxury machines later associated with BMW. But it put the company on four wheels. In 1929, an updated version became the BMW 3/15. For the first time, an automobile left the factory wearing the BMW badge. The tiny car gave BMW practical production experience and access to customers who needed transportation rather than prestige. The company did not remain a manufacturer of licensed economy cars for long. During the early 1930s, BMW developed larger models of its own. Six-cylinder engines appeared, and the twin-kidney grille began forming a recognizable identity. The company was moving into the space between ordinary transportation and expensive luxury. Then BMW discovered the force that would define its image for decades: competition. In 1936, the BMW 328 appeared at the Nürburgring with almost no public warning. Driven by Ernst Henne, the lightweight roadster immediately won its class in the Eifel race. The 328 did not depend on the largest engine. Its advantage came from balance, low weight, responsive handling, aerodynamic efficiency, and a 2-liter six-cylinder engine capable of challenging more powerful cars. BMW had found a formula that extended beyond racing. Performance did not have to mean brute force. It could come from precision. The 328 collected victories across Europe and transformed BMW into an internationally respected sporting brand. Its greatest triumph came in the 1940 Mille Miglia, where the streamlined touring coupe defeated larger rivals and won overall. In less than 2 decades, BMW had moved from banned aircraft engines to motorcycles, then from a licensed economy car to one of Europe's most admired sports machines. The company had finally found its identity: engineering, speed, and control. But Germany was moving toward catastrophe, and as Europe returned to war, BMW's factories would become part of a system far darker than anything the company had faced before. BMW entered the 1930s with something it had never possessed before: momentum. Its motorcycles were respected, its automobiles were becoming more sophisticated. The BMW 328 had proved that a relatively small company could defeat larger rivals through intelligent engineering. Then Germany changed. After the National Socialists took power in 1933, rearmament transformed German industry. Aircraft production received enormous state support, and BMW's oldest expertise suddenly became its most valuable asset again. The company returned to aviation on a scale far beyond anything it had known during the First World War. In 1934, BMW separated its aircraft engine operations into BMW Flugmotorenbau. New facilities followed, including the heavily camouflaged Allach plant near Munich. In 1939, BMW acquired Brandenburgische Motorenwerke, bringing additional factories and engineering capacity under its control. The expansion was dramatic. BMW produced engines including the BMW 132, the powerful BMW 801 radial engine, and later the BMW 003 jet engine. It also manufactured military motorcycles such as the R-75 with sidecar. Civilian cars continued for a time, but in 1941, automobile production was ordered to stop as the company concentrated increasingly on armaments. BMW was no longer mainly selling mobility to private customers. It had become a major part of the German war economy. That growth carried a human cost the company cannot separate from its engineering achievements. As German workers were drafted into the military and production demands increased, BMW used foreign laborers, prisoners of war, forced laborers, and concentration camp prisoners. They worked under coercion, inadequate food, dangerous conditions, and brutal discipline. Many suffered. Some died from hunger or exhaustion. This was not simply a system imposed on a helpless company. BMW's management accepted and exploited forced labor to meet production targets. The company grew larger, generated enormous wartime revenue, and expanded its factories while thousands of people were denied their freedom inside them. By 1944, BMW employed more than 56,000 people. A substantial part of that workforce consisted of foreign and forced laborers. But the industrial system built for war was becoming a target. Allied bombing damaged BMW facilities. Production was dispersed, hidden, and pushed into camouflaged sites. But the collapse of Nazi Germany could no longer be delayed. When the war ended in 1945, BMW's expansion vanished almost as quickly as it had begun. Factories were damaged or occupied. Machinery was dismantled and removed. The Munich plant was placed under American control, while Eisenach, the birthplace of every BMW automobile before the war, fell inside the Soviet occupation zone. BMW had survived the regime it had served, but it emerged morally burdened, physically shattered, and separated from the factory, designs, and specialists that had built its cars. The company that once dominated the sky now had no aircraft business. The company that had built celebrated sports cars no longer controlled its automobile plant, and before BMW could dream about performance again, it would have to discover whether it was still a company at all. When the war ended, BMW did not return to business. It returned to wreckage. The Munich plant had been heavily damaged. Much of its surviving machinery was dismantled or removed. The Eisenach automobile factory was now inside the Soviet occupation zone, beyond BMW's control. Aircraft engine production was forbidden once again. For the second time, BMW had lost the product that had made it important. At first, survival meant building almost anything the remaining workshops could produce. BMW repaired vehicles and manufactured basic goods and industrial components. These products kept people employed, but they did not provide a future. Motorcycles offered the first real path back. In December 1948, the BMW R24 became the company's first post-war vehicle. It was a modest, single-cylinder motorcycle designed for a country rebuilding its roads and economy. Strong demand gave BMW income, production experience, and a recognizable product again. But management wanted more than recovery. It wanted prestige. BMW returned to automobiles with the 501, presented in 1951 and produced from 1952. The large, rounded sedan was comfortable and technically ambitious, but expensive to build. Its elaborate bodywork earned it the nickname Baroque Angel, while slow production and a high price limited its market. In 1954, the BMW 502 added Germany's first post-war V8 and the world's first all-aluminum V8 engine used in a volume-produced car. Technically, it proved BMW could still innovate. Financially, it deepened the problem. The company followed with the elegant 503 and the 507 Roadster. Designed by Albrecht von Goertz, the 507 became one of the most beautiful cars of its era. But its hand-built complexity made it extraordinarily expensive. Only a small number were sold, and each prestigious car consumed resources BMW could barely afford. At the opposite end of the market, BMW found a temporary lifeline. The company licensed the Italian Isetta and redesigned it around a BMW motorcycle engine. Launched in 1955, the tiny front-door microcar was cheap to run, easy to park, and well-suited to post-war Germany. The Isetta sold far better than BMW's luxury cars. The larger BMW 600 followed, attempting to turn the same idea into family transport. But the market was changing. As incomes rose, customers wanted conventional small cars with more space, comfort, and power. The Isetta was becoming a symbol of the past before BMW had found a profitable future. Motorcycle sales were also falling. Luxury cars remained costly. The company's range had almost nothing in the middle. BMW was trapped between machines that were too small and cars that were too expensive. One final possibility appeared in 1959. The compact BMW 700, shaped with help from Giovanni Michelotti and developed from an idea promoted by Wolfgang Denzel, was presented in June. Dealers reacted with enthusiasm, but BMW was already running out of money. By the end of the year, its engineering reputation was still alive, its factories were still operating, and a promising new car was waiting. Yet the board was preparing to surrender the entire company to Daimler-Benz. The next battle for BMW would not happen on a racetrack or inside a factory. It would happen in a shareholder meeting. On December 9, 1959, BMW's shareholders entered a meeting that many believed would be the company's last as an independent manufacturer. The outcome appeared settled before the first argument began. Daimler-Benz had offered a restructuring plan tied to a takeover. BMW's financial position was desperate, and the proposal promised an escape from years of losses. For the board, surrendering control seemed safer than allowing the company to collapse. But BMW would no longer decide its own future. Its factories, workforce, dealer network, and brand would be reorganized according to the priorities of its greatest domestic rival. Inside the crowded Munich meeting, the takeover was presented as necessity. Then the resistance began. Small shareholders challenged the proposal, arguing that it valued BMW's name, employees, and remaining potential far too cheaply. Dealers who still believed in the company's products refused to accept that the blue and white badge had reached the end of its road. Their opposition did not solve the financial crisis, but it destroyed the impression that the sale was inevitable. What was expected to be a controlled approval became a confrontation over whether BMW still possessed something worth saving. One reason for hope stood outside the balance sheet. The new BMW 700 had received an enthusiastic response. It was compact, modern, and more conventional than the Isetta. Dealers saw customers asking for it. Engineers saw a car BMW could produce in meaningful numbers. The company did not yet have the money to recover, but it finally had evidence that the market might still want what BMW could become. Herbert Quandt was watching. He was already one of BMW's major shareholders. Committing more capital would be a serious gamble. The losses were real. The model range was incomplete, and Daimler-Benz offered a cleaner exit. Yet the resistance changed his calculation. Shareholders, dealers, employees, and managers were not defending an empty shell. They were defending engineering knowledge, factories, a sales network, and a brand that still inspired loyalty. The takeover plan failed. BMW remained independent, but survival was not guaranteed. Stopping the sale only prevented the company from disappearing that day. It did not provide the money, structure, or models needed to keep it alive. During the months that followed, Quandt worked with BMW's management and Works Council on an alternative. Detailed analysis suggested that the company could recover if it was reorganized around disciplined investment and a new generation of automobiles. On November 30, 1960, shareholders approved the restructuring plan. Quandt increased his commitment, giving BMW the financial foundation to remain independent. The rescue was not an act of nostalgia. It was a wager that BMW's best car had not yet been built, and everything now depended on proving that wager correct. The company had survived the vote. Now it had to survive the market. BMW's first weapon was already waiting. The BMW 700 entered production in 1959 as a compact, rear-engined car powered by a motorcycle-derived flat-twin engine. It was not luxurious, and it was not the kind of machine that would define BMW forever. But people bought it. Orders arrived quickly enough to keep the factories working and give the company breathing room. The 700 proved that BMW could still design a modern car, price it realistically, and sell it in meaningful numbers. Yet it could not carry the entire company into the future. BMW still lacked a car between its small models and expensive V8 sedans. This was the market gap that had nearly destroyed it, and the opportunity on which Herbert Quandt's investment depended. The answer appeared at the Frankfurt Motor Show in September 1961. It was called the BMW 1500. The new four-door sedan looked clean and modern. It had space for a family, but its proportions and chassis promised something more energetic than ordinary transportation. Under the hood was a new overhead cam four-cylinder engine producing 80 horsepower. The combination was unusual for its time. The 1500 was practical without feeling slow, comfortable without becoming heavy, and prestigious without entering the price territory of BMW's failed luxury cars. It offered middle-class buyers the character of a sports car inside a usable sedan. Visitors crowded around it. Orders soon exceeded the company's production capacity. Series production began in 1962, and the car became the foundation of what would be known as the Neue Klasse, the new class. More powerful versions followed, including the 1800 and 2000, allowing BMW to expand without abandoning the formula that had created the breakthrough. That formula was simple but powerful: a responsive engine, precise handling, a driver-focused cabin. Enough comfort for everyday life. BMW was no longer trying to compete by building the smallest car or the most extravagant one. It had created a new position between mass-market transportation and traditional luxury. The transformation went beyond a single model. BMW invested in new production halls, modern manufacturing methods, and greater automation. The company that had recently struggled to fund its next car was now racing to build enough vehicles to meet demand. Between 1962 and 1972, BMW produced nearly 340,000 Neue Klasse sedans. The design language also began to look familiar: the forward-leaning nose, twin-kidney grille, clean body surfaces, and the distinctive curve at the base of the rear side window, later associated with designer Wilhelm Hofmeister. But the most important achievement could not be seen in the bodywork. The Neue Klasse gave BMW a repeatable identity. It showed that the company could turn engineering precision into a complete business model. And from that foundation, BMW could finally build something larger than a rescue. It could build an empire around the driver. The Neue Klasse had saved BMW. The next challenge was turning survival into a permanent identity. In 1966, BMW shortened the successful sedan formula into a compact two-door model known as the 02 series. 2 years later came the car that would become its symbol, the BMW 2002. It combined a light body, rear-wheel drive, responsive steering, and a 2-liter engine in a package that was practical enough for daily life but eager on an open road. It was not the most luxurious car in its class, and it was not the most powerful. It simply made driving feel important. That quality traveled well beyond Germany. In the United States, the 2002 helped introduce BMW to buyers who wanted European precision without the weight and formality of a traditional luxury sedan. The company's cars were becoming products for people who saw driving as more than transportation. BMW expanded the formula upward. The new 5 Series arrived in 1972, followed by the first 3 Series in 1975. Compact dimensions, rear-wheel drive, a cockpit angled toward the driver, and increasingly powerful 4- and 6-cylinder engines turned the 3 Series into the center of the brand. By 1983, more than 1.3 million examples of the first generation had been sold. But BMW's road cars were only half of the strategy. On May 1, 1972, the company created BMW Motorsport GmbH under Jochen Nierpasch. Its original team consisted of just 35 specialists, but their task was enormous: concentrate BMW's scattered racing activities and turn competition into a laboratory for the brand. The BMW 3.0 CSL became the division's first great weapon. Lightweight body panels, aggressive aerodynamics, and a powerful straight six transformed the elegant coupe into a touring car champion. In 1975, it also carried BMW into American racing, winning at Sebring and helping the company become visible to a much larger audience. That same year, American advertising gave BMW a phrase that captured what the cars were becoming: the ultimate driving machine. It worked because the promise already existed in the product. The motorsport division then pushed the idea further. The mid-engined BMW M1 became its first car developed entirely from the ground up. Later, the M535i showed that racing knowledge could transform an ordinary-looking sedan. Then came the decisive breakthrough. Introduced in the 1980s, the first BMW M3 was developed so BMW could compete in touring car racing. Its widened body, high-revving engine, and precise chassis created a road car inseparable from the track. The M3 won championships, but its greater influence was cultural. BMW was no longer merely a successful premium manufacturer. It had made performance part of its identity, something customers could recognize before the engine even started. A company once nearly absorbed by its greatest rival had become the benchmark that rivals were forced to chase. But rapid growth was about to create a new temptation. BMW had mastered building its own cars. Soon it would try to build an empire by buying someone else's. By the early 1990s, BMW had become one of the world's most admired premium manufacturers. Success created a dangerous belief. Perhaps it could grow faster by buying an empire instead of building one. In 1994, BMW acquired Britain's Rover Group. The deal brought Rover, Land Rover, MG, MINI, factories, engineers, and access to market segments BMW had never occupied. On paper, it promised scale. In reality, it became BMW's greatest strategic failure. Rover's aging products required heavy investment. Its factories needed modernization. The brands occupied different positions, and an unfavorable exchange rate made British production increasingly difficult. BMW tried to rebuild the business, but losses continued. The acquisition also challenged the culture that had made BMW successful. BMW understood focused premium cars built around a clear identity. Rover was a collection of brands and problems that could not be repaired with one engineering formula. By 2000, the experiment was over. BMW sold Rover and Land Rover, ending an expansion that had consumed money, management attention, and confidence. The retreat was humiliating, but BMW did not leave empty-handed. It kept MINI. The company transformed the British icon into a modern premium brand. Production of the new MINI began at Oxford in 2001. Its design preserved the original's character while adding contemporary engineering, safety, and quality. Demand exceeded expectations. BMW had failed to manage the entire Rover empire, but it had rescued one powerful idea from the wreckage. At the opposite end of the market, another British name offered a different opportunity. BMW secured the rights to Rolls-Royce motor cars and built a new factory at Goodwood. In 2003, the new Phantom opened a modern era for the marque. MINI gave the group a premium small car. Rolls-Royce placed it at the highest level of luxury. BMW had become more than a single brand manufacturer. Then the industry began moving toward its greatest transformation in generations. In 2013, BMW launched the i3, its first purpose-built, series production electric car. Its carbon fiber passenger structure, aluminum chassis, compact proportions, and electric drivetrain were unlike anything else in the company's range. The i3 was not intended to replace the 3 Series. It was built to discover whether BMW could reinvent mobility before regulation, cities, and new competitors forced it to react. The car was expensive to develop and visually controversial. It never matched the sales of BMW's mainstream models. Yet it gave the company early experience in batteries, electric motors, lightweight construction, and sustainable production. Once again, BMW had placed its future on an unfamiliar machine. But this time, the threat was larger than one failed acquisition. The engine that had defined BMW for a century was no longer guaranteed to define the next one, and the company again faced the question that had followed it since 1919. What should BMW become when the technology that created it is no longer enough? BMW's history is not a story of uninterrupted success. It is a story of repeated reinvention. The company began with aircraft engines only to be forbidden from building them. It moved to motorcycles, entered the automobile business through a licensed economy car, and created one of Europe's most admired sports machines. Then it became part of a criminal war economy. When that system collapsed, BMW lost factories, machinery, products, and control of its automobile heritage. It returned with motorcycles, luxury sedans, and tiny microcars, but by 1959 almost every path had led to another financial problem. The company was hours away from being absorbed by Daimler-Benz. What saved BMW was not one heroic decision. Small shareholders challenged the sale. Dealers defended the brand. Employees believed the factory still had a future. Herbert Quandt accepted the risk of financing a company that had not yet proved it could survive. And then BMW built the car that justified their faith. The Neue Klasse did more than restore profitability. It created a formula: practical cars with sporting character, precise engineering, and a clear focus on the driver. The 2002 3 Series and BMW M transformed that formula into a global identity, but survival never made BMW incapable of failure. The Rover acquisition proved that confidence could become arrogance. The i3 proved that even a bold idea could arrive before the market was ready. Again and again, BMW discovered that engineering brilliance did not remove uncertainty. It only gave the company another way to confront it. Now the circle is closing. BMW has returned to the name Neue Klasse for a new generation of electric and digital vehicles. The first production model, the new iX3, began a new era at the company's Debrecen plant. In Munich, the city where BMW nearly disappeared, the next electric i3 is being prepared for production. The technology has changed completely. The question has not. Can BMW transform itself without losing the character that made people fight to save it? No company survives for more than a century by protecting every tradition. It survives by understanding which traditions must change and which must not. BMW was born to build aircraft engines. It became famous for building cars around the driver. Its greatest product, however, may be something less visible: the ability to become a different company before the old one disappears. In 1959, BMW refused to die. Every generation since has been asked to prove that decision was worth making, and the next judgment has already begun.